G'day guys, Bucky here. We are nestled right between the completion of AFL trade period, and we did particularly well, and we're 2 weeks away from the national draft. We've got, at the moment, 3 live picks in the national draft and maybe a rookie pick as well. We'll have to see which way the club will go on that. I've put up a video if you're interested on a draft smoky, James Rowe from Woodville West Torrens, mature age recruit small forward, who I'm pretty excited about. So hopefully our club is seriously looking at a James Rowe type. He's 21 years of age. I'm not here to talk about that though. And I'm not here necessarily to talk about our current list and the inclusions. I'll do that post the draft. Obviously very excited with the inclusions of Adam Sard and Zach Williams, and I think a little bit of a wild card in Lockie Fogarty. I think the first two in particular, in Sard and Williams, we hope, the proof is in the pudding now. It's about performing. They're on really good money and good contracts. We just hope that, obviously, we want to see them perform as footballers on the field, but we want to see them add something to the group, to the team, to the fabric of our football team, and the broader issue, which I want to talk about today, which is leadership, right across the board. But in particular, our two leaders, that is Patrick Cripps and Sam Doherty, who've been co-captains now for 2 years. And whether we think that is working, and whether we think that's the best thing for us moving forward. To try and put that into a little bit of context, let's just take a little bit of a history lesson, which is only 2 years old now, but at the conclusion of 2018, there were two significant things that were done by the club on the back of arguably our worst season ever. So changes had to be made, particularly from a leadership point of view and a coaching point of view. We collected our 5th wooden spoon, our 5th in, sort of 18 years, which was unprecedented. We only won the 2 games against Essendon mid-season and then Gold Coast Suns late in the year. It was miserable. We had 300-point floggings, which is unheard of. And we had an average losing margin of, I think, 8 goals across those 20 losses. Soul-destroying. And for good reason, we were the laughing stock of the competition. And it hurts when you are the laughing stock. And we were sort of once one of the hated teams of the competition just because we were so powerful, but we're no longer hated. Almost patronised, pitied, and for the most part irrelevant. And that hurts. So changes had to be made. There wasn't a lot of excitement out of 2018 other than the performance of Patrick Cripps on field, who won the best and fairest in an absolute landslide. I think he won it by 60-odd votes from Cade Simpson. And as I mentioned, at the end of that year, I think Brendan Bolton, the coach, had lost his way a little bit. There were murmurings that there was a bit of a disconnect between the players, more from a communication point of view, and Brendan. So the club made 2 significant moves. And the first one I want to speak about was the appointment of former premiership coach, legend of the football club, premiership player, in Robert Walls, to be, I think the title was mentor to the coaching group, and in particular to Brendan Bolton. It's a voluntary role. He'd come into the club 2 or 3 times a week, oversee training from the sidelines, not get really too much involved. It was more sort of, through a different lens. That's what was sold to us as supporters, and I'm pretty sure that's what was sold to Brendan Bolton as the coach as well. But I saw it a little bit differently, and I'm sure Brendan Bolton would have seen it differently as well. You could only imagine having a former great of the football club with such a huge presence as Robert Walls standing over your left shoulder. I thought it was a pretty crude move from our football club. I didn't think it really helped Bolton at all. I think he pretty much thought then and there that he was doomed. And I reckon at this stage, obviously Walls was going back and reporting, on Bolton's performances as the coach of the football club. And we all know what happened. He just lost the players in the first half of 2019. And the club swung the axe. It was brutal. And I think from that point of view, they failed to support him. And that inclusion of Robert Wall said a lot about our players as well, that they escaped. I think our players generally at that time escaped a lot of the scrutiny. And I think that still lingers a little bit. And I think from that point of view, we're still very immature as a playing group and as a football team. And I know we've done a lot of work off field to get this club right. But I think a lot of those players remain from that period. And I think a lot of them still do not take a lot of responsibility for their own performances and a team performance. And I think Brendan Bolton copped the wrath of that at the time. The second significant thing that happened at the end of 2018 was the club was pretty swift to take the captaincy away from Mark Murphy. Now, he relinquished the captaincy, I must say, but it was on the cards that there would be a change. We knew there would be a change. At the time, we were tossing up, who would it be? Would it be Patrick Cripps, who'd taken over, the mantle of easily our best player, had a fabulous 2018. He was All-Australian. Or would it be Sam Docherty, who missed the entire 2018 season with a knee reconstruction, but I think was doing particularly well on the sidelines, sort of like an assistant coach. We didn't know which way they'd go. There was talk that they'd be co-captains, and that's what the club decided, that we'd go with co-captains. So Docherty at 25 and Cripps, I think, at 23 years of age when he was made captain, was the move by the club. And you could sort of understand at the time we'd go with the co-captaincy. I can't remember too much sort of talk about whether it was the right move. Why didn't we just go with the one captain, the traditional one captain? It was almost like we were copying a little bit of a formula from a lot of younger clubs, with a younger playing group to go with a co-captain sort of model. So we were pretty happy. Cripps, obviously from Western Australia, talk maybe out of contract, etc. Let's tie into the club. I hope that wasn't the reason to make him stay. But at the end of the day, both going into 2019 under Brendan Bolton. So it was a decision by Brendan Bolton to go with the co-captaincy. And we're pretty excited about it. This is what Docherty said at the 2018 Best and Fairest when it was announced. He said, despite our various differences in personality and approaches to leadership, we complement each other well. And the main thing for us is our common goal to take the club back to sustained success. Bolton said, this is what Brendan Bolton said, it was a unanimous choice. We felt it right to make the dual appointment. Bolton said, it's a new direction, never been done before at the football club, and a huge decision, really, from a leadership point of view, from Brendan Bolton. We're heading in with the structure, but one I believe will strongly benefit our young group. So it was all about the young group, and that was the message sold to us as supporters about the young group, and we needed co-captains, and that was a unanimous choice, and they were the two best. Our best players, basically, ended up being, and you couldn't argue that Sam Docherty and Patrick Cripps were our best players, ended up as co-captains. 2 years down the track, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that now, is the bottom line. I think the fact that this was introduced under Brendan Bolton, and David Teague really wouldn't have had anything to do with this, really. I know he was an assistant coach at that time, but I don't think he would have had much to do with this. Makes me a little bit uncomfortable as well. And I can understand when Teague took over, he wasn't going to start messing with leadership at that time. And I think, to be fair, Docherty then missing 2019, both Cripps and Docherty really, from a playing point of view, didn't have an opportunity to play together as co-captains, which they were able to do this year. But now, Teague going, really, he's been in the job, 20 months? I wonder, really, if David Teague believes in this model and whether it actually works or not. And I could argue that I don't think it does work. I'm a little bit at times uncomfortable with the co-captain model at our football club. And I think really it's one or the other. And I think we're not really probably going to make that hard decision whether it's going to be Patrick Cripps or Sam Doherty. I'm a great believer in one voice. Particularly players coming in, new players coming into the football club will look for obviously a leadership group. The club has an emerging leadership program run by Andrew Russell, which is great. So emerging leaders can come from underneath. I think Sam Walsh and Jacob Weeding were part of that emerging leadership program, and Liam Jones, and they were added to the leadership group this year, which is great. But I really think the best clubs, the strongest clubs, the mature clubs have one captain who's one voice, and it's the strongest person, the strongest willed individual with the strongest voice and the strongest presence needs to be the captain of our football club. Now, that means it's Sam Doherty and not Patrick Cripps, or if that means it's Patrick Cripps and not Sam Doherty, then so be it. And that's going to be such a hard decision to make. Now, I don't think the club's going to make it this year, but I think it's a really significant year for both boys. Both from a playing point of view, obviously. There's no doubt that Patrick Cripps was underdone this season. He looked sore. At times, I wouldn't say his mind looked somewhere else, but he was definitely having some issues off field, and we know some of those, and they are sensitive. There's always a calling to go home. There's one camp that says Patrick Cripps will stay in Melbourne, loves it in Melbourne, is just about to sign a contract. And then there's another camp that it says, okay, that Fremantle, the West Coast Eagles, are heavily into him, and Cripper is thinking about, making a move home because he does become a restricted free agent at the end of next year. And the talk's not going to go away until, he signs on a dotted line. Now, let's hope he's not remaining. Okay, that's an incentive for us to keep him in the captaincy. If we think one captain is the best way to go for our football club, then tough decisions need to be made, I think. There was a situation, obviously, with a really sensitive situation with Sam Doherty, with his cancer scare. Hopefully he's all over that, or will be all over that by the time pre-season starts. We wish him all the best. But I've got this inkling, I've just got this feeling that we're at a stage in our club's journey that we need to go with the one captain, just like Melbourne did this year when they decided to appoint Max Gawn. I think it sort of gives us a bit of immaturity if we have two captains, that we need to have two voices. And it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned in that regards. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know really what David T thinks, what he really thinks, whether he agrees with it. I know he was only in the position for a short period of time and you need to keep going with it. But I wonder if he's thinking, okay, what's the best thing for our football club? We know he's a pretty stubborn sort of fella. But will he make a move? Will one of those, will Sam Doherty or Patrick Cripps decide that maybe for the best interest of the football club that we only have one captain? So I want to pose the question to you guys. If there was a choice between the two, either Sam Doherty and Patrick Cripps, which one would you go with? We know that we've got some outstanding future captains coming through, and I hope it's going to be a race between Jacob Wiedering and Sam Walsh. We can just see that. And I don't think hopefully the club's not in another position in 3 or 4 years' time to say, let's go with the co-captains again. Look, this all might be just fluff, Cripps and Doherty might come out this season and absolutely explode and we play finals football and leadership is fine. But if we seem to still have the same issues that we had this year, which is a lack of direction at times, then maybe a change needs to be made. And I see it this way as well, just before I finished. Who's got the greatest ceiling in regards to their individual performance? I think Doc's just about reached his ceiling. coming off those two knee reconstructions. I think he can reach a pretty good level, but I think he's going to get much better than he was in 2017, where he was outstanding. If he can get back to that, anywhere near that level, that's great, but I don't think he's going to get any better. He could get a lot better, though, as an individual leader. Cripso. Let's look at Patrick Cripps from an individual point of view. I think he's got another 2 levels to get to, okay, as a superstar of this competition. I reckon he dropped a fair bit this year. And I don't know whether the captaincy and having the burden of the captaincy is a great thing for him if we want him to get him back to his best form. And even from 2019, where he was absolutely fantastic, we all think that he could even go to an extra level than that. Can he get to that if he's got the burden of captaincy is an interesting question as well. So who would you like? Who would you like as your captain of your football club? Are you happy with 2 at the moment, or would you like to see some change?